Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. A major expansion at Delta Port gets the green light.
To ensure that we have the capacity to get our exports to markets, receive the goods we need every day, and support our manufacturing and other businesses.
How the controversial project will increase capacity and why some say it's the wrong decision. Plus, the call for BC to do more to prevent fatal cases of domestic violence.
I absolutely think Clare's Law can save lives.
The changes that other provinces have already adopted. And the hefty penalty handed to a West Vancouver man for feeding black bears.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. A major change is set to come to trade on the West Coast. The federal government has now approved a massive new container terminal in Tsawwassen. Supporters say it will create thousands of jobs and relieve a big trade pinch. But some environmental groups are seriously worried it will damage local wildlife. Dan Burrett joins us live with more on this. Dan, first of all, where is this going to be built?
Roberts Bank, Anita. If anyone who's gone to or from the Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal look across the water, you will notice that massive concrete setup across the water, full of containers, ships going to and fro from the Delta Port and West Shore terminals already there. Now, Ottawa has said yes to Roberts Bank Terminal 2, right beside the existing site. It will be led by the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. There's an artist's rendering, which says it could take up to 6 years to build that. The government says it will open up what it calls Canada's throttled marine supply chain. The port says it will create more than 17,000 well-paying jobs, generate hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue, among other things. The Natural Resources Minister says it will also address environmental concerns with 373 legally binding conditions to protect birds, whales, and salmon, among other creatures.
A requirement for the proponent to create a marine mammal detection and response plan to protect marine mammals during construction. A requirement for the proponent to monitor noise levels, implement procedures to delay departures of container vessels, and reduce underwater noise during berthing activities when whales, including the southern resident killer whale, are in the project area.
Wilkinson also says they have the, quote, active support of the Musqueam First Nation and, quote, satisfaction from the nearby Tsawwassen First Nations with mitigation measures. Other First Nations have already signed mutual benefits agreements with the Port Authority, Anita.
Okay, Dan, you mentioned environmental concerns, though. What reaction has this approval prompted?
Anger, disappointment, among other things. This project has been in the works for more than a decade. It is massive, and various groups say it's just too big a risk. Raincoast Conservation, for one, argues the project will get in the way of juvenile Chinook salmon as they head down the Fraser River.
And they like to access eelgrass habitat, which is on the south side of the current terminal that exists. With the new expansion of the project, it will create a large barrier to that migration as they try and get around the terminals to access those feeding and foraging grounds.
Meanwhile, beyond the environmental concerns, the International Longshore and Warehouse Union local says it is very opposed to the project, concerned new automation at Roberts Bank Terminal will cost jobs. Again, this project has a lot of considerations to it and could take up to 6 years to build. Anita.
Dan Burrett live for us tonight. Thank you. Well, friends and family of the 17-year-old boy killed on a bus in Surrey gathered today to celebrate his life. Ethan Bestplugs was stabbed just over a week ago. As John Hernandez reports, he's remembered as a kind, caring, and curious teen who cared deeply about his family.
Just that morning, he was helping his sister, learn how to read or ride a bike.
Reflections on a day this family wishes never happened. A mother trying to make sense of the sudden loss and pain.
I feel like a part of me has died with him, but I also feel him through me as well. I can feel some sense of calmness and peace. I don't want to.
This memorial service for 17-year-old Ethan Bestplugs held just down the road from where tragedy occurred. On April 11th, he was on a bus near King George SkyTrain station. His family says he texted his mom that he was being threatened. Shortly after, he was stabbed. He died after he was rushed to the hospital. 20-year-old Caden Mintenko from Burnaby has since been arrested and charged with second-degree murder.
It doesn't bring Ethan back, but at least there is some justice.
Ethan's life song has ended, but the melody of his life continues on and will be with us forever.
A life that touched many others despite being cut short.
Ethan wasn't just our friend, he was our best friend and our source of inspiration and motivation.
A young man remembered for his kindness and compassion towards his family, friends, and beloved pets.
So we got ducks last year, kind of something our family always wanted, and Ethan bonded with them. Yeah, he would take them out for little walks around the neighborhood, and they'd put smiles on people's faces.
His family hopes his death will inspire kindness in others.
Just have some hope for humanity and humankind, and people to just start caring for each other.
Caring that can hopefully prevent tragedies like this from happening again. John Hernandez, CBC News, Surrey.
Advocates in British Columbia are calling on the province to consider passing legislation that would allow people to access details of their partner's criminal history. Supporters of Clare's Law say it would help prevent cases of fatal domestic violence. But as Michelle Gassoub reports, not everyone agrees it's what's needed.
I absolutely think Clare's Law can save lives.
Advocates are confident the legislation called Clare's Law could help victims of domestic violence. If introduced, it would allow people to ask police for their partner's criminal history without their partner's knowledge. Police could also use the law to proactively tell someone if their partner could be a risk to them. The law has already been adopted in 4 Canadian provinces.
Clare's Law is often accessed by someone who's in a fairly new relationship and is seeing warning signs. They're concerned that things might not be right, or maybe they've heard some things about their partner's history, but they're just not sure.
According to data from Statistics Canada, the majority of people killed by intimate partners are women, about 68 in 2021. And in BC, last year, 10 women were allegedly killed by their partners. But not all advocates support the law. In a report, the Ending Violence Association of BC says the law won't reduce harm or decrease intimate partner violence, saying it replicates existing laws, policies, and effective procedural strategies, and has the unintended negative consequence of placing an undue onus on victims. Others say more systemic change is needed.
It's a mix. I mean, on one hand, I think it makes sense that there would be an opportunity for a woman that is concerned about being in an abusive relationship to check. On the other hand, I think it creates other challenges because we know that the criminal legal system often doesn't pursue charges when we're talking about domestic and intimate partner violence.
The policy has also been criticized for creating lengthy backlogs, with applicants waiting months to hear back from police. Here in BC, there's another existing workaround.
Check the court registry. Right now, you can do that to check to see if there's been charges. They won't specify domestic violence, but there is already an option available. And one of the things that we could do is that we could ask the court registry to make more information available.
In 2019, the BC Liberals introduced Clare's Law as a private member's bill, but it never made it past the first reading. Advocates now hoping that momentum in other parts of the country could lead to movement here in BC. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
In Sechelt, the Sechelt Nation says evidence of 40 unmarked graves has been found at the site of the former St. Augustine's residential school.
Children attending the institute were not just from the Sechelt Nation. There are 51 other nations whose children attended, and they have also known of missing children.
The discovery comes after interviews with survivors, history, research, and ground-penetrating radar. The Catholic-run institution was opened between 1904 and 1975. The nation and researchers from the University of Saskatchewan expect to find evidence of more graves in the next phase of their search, and they are asking for privacy as they process the information. Well, SFU has appointed a special advisor to try to find a new path forward for its football program after a snap decision earlier this month to drop its varsity team. In a statement, the school writes the advisor will review and make recommendations regarding potential sustainable opportunities for football, and that SFU will report back with a final decision by the end of December. The school shocked students and alumni, saying the team would not play in the upcoming season due to uncertainty caused by the NCAA announcing it would drop SFU football in 2024. Well, it's been 1 month since BC Ferries got a new CEO to help lead it out of troubled waters. But who is Nicolas Jimenez, and how will his focus be different than his predecessors? Justin McElroy sat down with him in his first one-on-one camera interview on the job and has this report.
BC Ferries. It's a surface with 39 boats, 39 parking decks where car alarms go off at all times, arcade machines that are always out of order, and a buffet service that has been closed for 3 years. Those are my complaints. Yours may be different, but one thing is guaranteed. You have opinions about BC Ferries.
Everybody wants this company to be successful, even if there's things getting in the way of that being true right now.
That is Nicolas Jimenez, the new CEO of BC Ferries. He started a month ago after years of running ICBC, which means he understands a little bit about what it's like to run a government-owned company.
I mean, in as much as it's a challenge, everybody thinks they have an opinion on how these companies should run and why they're not running as well as they should.
And right now, BC Ferries isn't running well, at least not as well as they have in the past. Here is a chart. It shows the percent of ferries arriving on time over the last decade. BC Ferries essentially went from an A student to a B student. And all those delayed and canceled ferries led to the firing of the last CEO, and the new CEO knows it's a giant challenge.
It's definitely one of the biggest issues we have in front of us.
But how do you solve a problem the size of the Spirit of Vancouver Island? Under the old management, there was a belief by some insiders that BC Ferries cared a lot about ships and terminals, but less about people and service. Which is why Jimenez's comments in his first on-camera interview since taking the job were interesting.
Well, the immediate priority has to be people. We're going to see a real fundamental shift in how we think about people. So it might be about boats and terminals, but fundamentally it's about people.
All that focus on having happier people may be why the union is actually saying nice things about him.
Nicolas seems to be very much different than what we are accustomed to. Sometimes people in those positions can be a little disconnected from the employees, but he did not seem to have that at all.
Shade about his predecessor aside, what needs to change to stop the staff shortages? Jimenez mentioned 4 things: paying employees more, reducing the number of casual positions, giving workers more flexibility, and speeding up certification for new immigrants who are already skilled mariners. It sounds simple and straightforward, but if it was, every government agency would be well run and every employee would be happy. And if those changes don't happen, well, here is another chart. Traffic on BC Ferries is now at record levels after a dip during the pandemic, which means the longer all these cancellations go on, the more complaints will be a little bit more serious than just bringing back the buffet. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
A West Vancouver man is being hit with a $5,000 fine for feeding black bears in his backyard of his West Vancouver home. The Conservation Service says Vitaly Shevchenko pleaded guilty to feeding dangerous wildlife, a violation under the Wildlife Act. An investigation was launched in 2018 after video surfaced online of a family hand-feeding bears through a patio door. The Conservation Office says feeding wildlife compromises the safety of people and wild animals and is reminding the public to keep attractants secured. The ministry says no bears were euthanized at this West Van address. Well, the annual 420 celebration returned to Vancouver today with cannabis users and vendors gathering at Sunset Beach. It's the first full-scale gathering since the pandemic, and despite not getting the approval from the city, the event is still sparking up. But with pot legal, we wondered, why is 420 still considered a thing and billed as a protest? Yasmin Gandam went down to find out.
420 looks a little different this year than it has in the past. Smaller crowds, slightly quieter, but with cannabis legal in BC, we wanted to find out what still draws people to this event. What does it mean to you to be here?
I like it because there's a variety of everything, you know, and it is plants and that are a good medicine. You know, and I look at it a bit like that as I'm aging.
And we know that it's legalized. So what is the kind of purpose of being here today?
like you say, it is legal, and I just enjoy it. You know, it's a happy time, and young people should consider and look at what it has to offer, you know, rather than the alcohol.
I stopped drinking at a young age just because, well, I became a mom. I think it's a little bit better than drinking, I think.
We know cannabis is legal. What do you think about people still gathering here?
Well, I think what it is, it's Vancouver, and I feel like people, they're entitled to camp and make a protest. You know, they want to enjoy themselves, but at the point, they want to make a point. I don't mind it myself.
So have you been to 420 before?
No, it's my first time.
Okay, so what do you think?
We just got here, we're getting started, but so far it looks pretty good. Walking around, experiencing, you know, something that we don't get to do in Texas.
So what exactly are people protesting here today?
The freedom to smoke cannabis and to use it when they feel like it. That's what I think is.
Okay. I'm just interested to know, you know, where the freedom is lacking, because obviously people can go to dispensaries and purchase cannabis. So
I work in a dispensary, so they can come to a dispensary, and someone like myself would help them.
What do you hear from other neighbors?
We did have a post on our building that said like we should actually protest 420, which I thought was pretty interesting, seeing as how many other things are kind of going on in this area right now that might not be safe for people. And I thought it was a little interesting to walk up to my building and see a post that is actually suggesting us to protest it as just like people living here. It's very peaceful. There's just like some music, people hanging out, so I don't see it as an issue.
What do you feel about 420 being a resident here?
It doesn't bother me at all. It's just more energy in the neighborhood, and as long as everybody's peaceful, which if they're smoking, they're probably pretty mellow. But no, there hasn't been any major incidents here. Everybody's pretty well behaved, and yeah, I think that's what makes Vancouver great.
Firefighters were on scene of an apartment fire this morning in downtown Vancouver. Flames and smoke could be seen leaping from the south-facing patio at around 10 this morning. Firefighters received multiple calls from the 100 block of Kiefer Place. Fortunately, no injuries have been reported as crews were able to reach the scene quickly and douse the fire before it spread.
Thankfully this building is sprinklered, so that was able to contain it until our crews got there to put out the rest of the fire.
Officials say the fire appears to have started on the outdoor patio area. Investigators are currently looking into the cause of the blaze. And RCMP are investigating a fire that threatened homes in Kamloops. Yesterday, fire spread through grass and sagebrush and caused outages for thousands in the area. The flames scorched a hillside dangerously close to homes. Police say the blaze was sparked by a campfire in Strathcona Park. Now, criminal investigation has been launched to find out who the person was who lit it. It's hard to believe brush fires could be happening at this point because we've got so much rain here in the Lower Mainland, Kuljeet.
Lots of rain, and we had lots of wind as well, a few wind warnings in effect, not just for the Lower Mainland, but for parts of Campbell River and parts of Victoria and Vancouver Island all day today. Winds got up to 90 kilometers an hour this afternoon. They should die down by midnight for both the Lower Mainland and Greater Victoria, but very windy and rainy. It's the kind of weather where your umbrella turns inside out and you got to struggle with it for about half a block before you can get it back. Current temperatures across the Lower Mainland, 6 degrees in Abbotsford, 6 for Pitt Meadows, 5 at the airport, 4 degrees on the North Shore, so a little bit cooler on the North Shore and a little bit more wet as well. They got a lot more rain than we did here in Vancouver. Today's high was 10 degrees, way below average. Low sitting pretty close to average, so that's not too bad. Like I said, the winds up to 70 kilometers an hour for us here in the Lower Mainland will die down by midnight. Rain for Friday, about 5 millimeters, a little bit of rain, and a little bit more for both Saturday and Sunday, about 15 millimeters each. And then finally will come the sunshine, and we'll get to that in just a second. Tomorrow across the province, mix of sun and cloud for Dease Lake, 11 degrees, a little bit of rain for Prince Rupert, some rain for Port Hardy as well, as a wind warning there dies down as well. Some sunshine for Williams Lake and Prince George at around 9 to 11 degrees. So sitting at average temperatures for this time of year for the Cariboo region. Like I said, rain for the next few days, light rain tomorrow, more on the weekend. Then we get a mix of sun and cloud for Monday. This is when things get really interesting and fun, because this is what we've been waiting for a long time, is the beginning of spring. And I feel like this is the stretch that will kick it off for us, which is early next week. We'll get into the double digits, 17 degrees by Thursday, and mostly sunny conditions. So we do have something to look forward to after this cold day that we've had. Anita?
Yeah, you better believe I'm looking forward to 17 degrees. Thanks, Kuljeet.
You're welcome.
Well, BC is home to one of the rarest animals on Earth, the spirit bear. Now, for several decades, Kitasoo-Hi-Hi First Nation has been trying to protect it at all costs over fear of attracting poachers. They've recently made significant gains, but with salmon stocks in decline, there is concern that time is running out for those black bears.
We are in this place, it's in the Fjordland Conservancy. This place is known as Kynoch. This is one of our old village sites. We came here with BC Parks and one of the ministers, George Heyman. We basically signed off on a new agreement where our watchmen will now have provincial BC Parks authority. And so if someone's doing something illegal here, our watchmen can now basically issue them a ticket. In the past, you would see very little enforcement agencies up here. We saw so many illegal activities. But my community said, get a watchman program, get your own people out there. So we started building the watchman program in around 2004. And the challenge is that our guys would ride around and do a lot of the data collection, and they would enforce laws on behalf of our community, on behalf of the nation. But we weren't recognized by the provincial government or the federal government. Prior to that, you know, if our watchmen caught something, you know, they caught someone doing something illegal, we would have to report it, and then we'd have to wait for someone to come up and do an investigation, or, you know, so it took time.
I've been going out on the boat since I was a young kid. All these older generations that, you know, handed down their knowledge to me. My favorite thing is to pulling up to a boat when they're anchored, introduce the program to them, and, you know, what we do. Just to get to know all these people all over the world, you know, that do stop here and do use our territory for anchors for the night. That's the best part of the job.
You can see the bear track right there. We also worked with him to announce a closure of the black bear hunt. Black bears in this part of the world are extremely special because this is the only part in the world that you get spirit bears. And spirit bear is basically a white black bear. And white bears have always been protected, but black bears have not. After the Great Bear Rainforest Agreement, we set aside a lot of the territory in protected areas. Places like this is a protected area, it's a conservancy. And we had the issue where people were coming in and shooting all the bears. So I'm out here, we're trying to run a tourism business. We're trying to take clients from all around the world, show them the beauty of the territory, and sometimes we'd come across a dead bear. And someone would come here and basically shoot a bear, chop off his head, take the fur, and they would leave the whole carcass there. It just felt like a violation of our culture, because that's not a part of our culture. And it just spoke to a larger issue on how do we have a say in wildlife management, and so that's why we pushed super hard to try and end that industry and make sure it didn't exist here.
Bears that we do have, the numbers are going up. There was this black mom with a white cub in one of our estuaries, and my next time there, that cub was all alone, and it had to like learn how to survive on its own. I was watching all these other bears over the past years as it was growing up. It was like the king of the river after. And whenever you seen that white bear come out, it's really, you know, special.
We're super glad to see that there's no more grizzly bear hunting, there's no more black bear hunting, and that, you know, is more in line with our culture.
Of course, if you're still interested in conservation, there's plenty to do in your own backyard. Lisa Christensen now with some suggestions for your weekend planner in this week's Getting Out.
Hi, I'm Lisa Christensen, and this is Getting Out. A bunch of reasons why you should get out of the house this weekend. First up, it's Earth Day on Saturday, and that means there are events going on all over the world. But we're going to look local. Right now, we're in Stanley Park, and I'm going to meet up with Tricia Cullingham. She's the Executive Director of the Stanley Park Ecology Society. Happy almost Earth Day to you.
Thank you.
What does Earth Day mean to the Stanley Park Ecology Society?
Our focus is education, research, and conservation rooted in Stanley Park. We hold an annual event every year. There'll be guided tours, so there'll be a wildlife walk, a plant walk, a tour with birds. There'll be a tour of the herring colony.
Now, are you going to be getting rid of some invasive species as well?
Yes. For those people who want to roll up their sleeves and get a bit dirty, they can join our stewardship team, and we'll be going out to Lost Lagoon to remove some invasive species. So there's always work to be done, so I encourage everyone to come out.
And if you missed Vancouver's Visaki Parade last weekend, don't despair. You've got another one coming up this weekend in Surrey, one of the biggest in the world. Vancouver is a city that loves burlesque, and you get even more this Saturday night at the Rio Theatre with Burlesque Long Form. Local performer and producer April O'Peel has challenged dancers to come up with a 10-minute act. Should be pretty good. Hey, let's go to Lumberman's Arch. If you're tired of 2023, in fact, if you're tired of the 2000s altogether, the Vancouver Improv Centre has a good idea for you. It's called Bringing Back the 90s. They want to create the best 90s improv show. It starts this week and goes until May 27th. On Saturday night at the Commodore Ballroom, it's pop band They Might Be Giants. Tuesday night at the Thunderbird Sports Centre, it's Louis Capaldi. And on Wednesday at the Orpheum, it's the Gypsy Kings. And if you find yourself kind of parched this weekend, why not take in the Vancouver Brewers Fest 2023? It's the inaugural event. It goes for 10 days and includes all kinds of different things going on at 25 different craft breweries. So there you have it. Lots of reasons to get out. Don't let the rain get you down. Come on, let's get out there like these folks.
Yeah, not sure I want to be like those folks, but hey, no excuses. There's tons going on this weekend, so make sure you get out of the house. That is it for our show tonight. Thanks so much for watching us. We are not on television because of NHL hockey, but Dan Burrett and his late show will be. We'll see you tomorrow.